U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he is imposing reciprocal tariffs to match duties put on U.S. goods by other countries in a move that ratchets up a trade war that kicked off on his return to the White House. At an event in the White House Rose Garden, Trump announced a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles, which took effect at midnight. The sweeping duties would erect new barriers around the world's largest consumer economy, reversing decades of trade liberation and have shaped the global order. Trading partners are expected to respond with countermeasures of their own that could lead to dramatically higher prices for everything from bicycles to wine. Trump has already imposed 20% duties on all imports from China and 25% duties on steel and aluminium, and extended them to nearly $150 billion worth of downstream products. His advisors say the tariffs will return strategically vital manufacturing capabilities to the United States.
But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who are doing their job. They let it happen. And they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday Republicans in Congress are looking to pass the largest tax cuts in American history to accompany a series of other legislative priorities. During his tariff announcements at the Rose Garden, Trump said his big, beautiful bill would have no cost to Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits. The Republican-controlled U.S. Senate Budget Committee released its budget blueprints for enacting President Donald Trump's tax cut and immigration reform agenda on Wednesday, and lawmakers predicted they expected to vote to adopt the resolution later this week.
And now we're going to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and that's where we're relying on Mike and John Thune. And we will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits, and the Democrats will, because if they got in, the entire economy would collapse. This country is heading for a collapse. But they've been working tirelessly on taking the next step to pass the plan for our one big, beautiful bill. I'd like to name it that if you can. One big, I made that statement about 6 months ago, and everybody calls it one big, beautiful bill. And it will be that. It'll have everything, the big tax cuts and every incentive there is. And we're going to get us closer to the debt extension. We have to get the debt extension passed, and I know you're going to be able to do that, Mike, and it's very important that you do that. Shared priorities done, including certain permanent tax cuts. We want the tax cuts to be permanent, spending cuts, energy and historic investments in defense, border, and so much more. We're covering everything. These will be phenomenal. There'll be no bill like this going to straighten. One bill is going to straighten out our country for many, many years to come.
Joining us to talk about this further is our diplomatic correspondent, Vinmartin. Good to have you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Charles. My pleasure.
All right. Do you think that Donald Trump has thought through this? Because there is a potential consequence on the consumers and businesses in America.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, he may have thought this through. And you discover that since he took over the reins of power in the U.S., he has continued to say that, look, whatever I'm doing is what I had told you I will do. So he had, in the run-up to the election, he had talked about increasing tariffs. He had talked about dealing with countries who, according to him, took business away from the United States. He was also talking about retaliatory tariffs for countries that had tariffs on America even before he came. So I would say he thought it through, because these are very serious issues. And like you insinuated in your question, this is going to have large, extensive consequences, not just for the United States, not just for the trading partners of the United States, for everyone around the world. For instance, for every import or export now into the United States, there's a baseline tariff of 10%. So before we start discussing, there's a baseline tariff of 10%. And this baseline 10%, which will go into effect on April 5, according to him, will affect countries like the United Kingdom, Singapore, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Turkey, Colombia, Argentina, El Salvador, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. That is baseline, must be paid. Okay, but then there's the one that is targeted at his worst offenders, in quotes. Like countries like the European Union, 20%.
Wow.
China, 54%.
Wow.
I mean, there was a 35 and then the 10, and he knows how he does all these additions. So for China, their goods would attract a percentage of tariff of 54%. Vietnam, 46%. Thailand, 36%. Japan, 24%. Cambodia, 49%. South Africa, 30%. Taiwan, 32%.
Wow.
So, according to him, the companies that are bringing these goods into the United States will pay. But you don't need to be an economic professor to know that if I'm importing goods or bringing goods into America and you charge me 54%, that I'm going to put that 54% on the American consumer.
Absolutely.
So this is a big challenge. It's, you've heard experts say that for countries like Canada, it could trigger a recession. For a number of other countries, it could trigger some economic consequences. But unfortunately, Trump is not interested in all that. He has said it, and that's the way he wants it. Well, some people are thinking that in his usual transactional way of doing things, that maybe he will now go into negotiations with these individual countries to do something specific for them or whatever. But the truth, Charles, is that this morning, the world is in chaos. True. People don't understand how this is going to pan out. Nobody can tell you precisely the economic consequences or implication of what has happened. It just happened about 7 hours ago or thereabout. So a lot of countries are digesting it. And I can assure you that as early as today, there are going to be retaliatory tariffs from some of these countries, probably Canada, China, and some of the countries that have been affected. But the biggest challenge is the ordinary Americans, because this tariff is so far-reaching that it's going to affect almost everything that is done in America. Almost every product. Of course, cars, 35% right away. So, who is going to buy them? Mm. So, it is, like I said, something that we will need hours, days, and weeks and months to really know what are going to be the consequences of this action, which he calls Liberation Day.
Wow. And I'm just thinking about it really. You mentioned the American people, because again, your policies must be seen to drive positive change for the people. But if it doesn't happen in the immediacy, because again, part of the plan is have these businesses coming to America, establishing America, and then sell their product within America. So if it doesn't happen in another 1 or 2 years, and there is a trade tariff, then we are into some serious chaos.
Of course, there's already a tariff war that is going to happen immediately. Yes, his intendment or his intention or his objective is to bring back manufacturing and production inside the United States, because there's been, over the years, there's been a lot of manufacturing for goods or for companies in America taken out into other countries, outsourced, I think that's the word, to other countries for either cheap labor or some trade advantages or whatever. But a lot of manufacturing for consumables in America had gone to other countries. So he wants to bring it back. That's fine. But number one is, for an automobile company to move their production back to the United States, it's not going to take 1 week.
Absolutely.
And probably not 1 month, maybe not 1 year, maybe 2 years. So what happens in the intervening period between this tariff imposition and when these companies or countries are ready to bring back manufacturing in the United States? There's no doubt that a lot of companies would want to do that so that they can sell more goods, because this is a global tragedy. Because if you are moving these goods after you pay the 54 and load it on the consumers in America, it will affect sales, which means if I was selling 20 products or items, maybe I sell 5. So there's an impact.
Yeah.
There's a consequence. And don't forget that these countries are going to tax or put tariffs on American products, which also brings a burden
to their own people.
So it's something that is so far-reaching. And you said he thought it. Did he think it through?
Yeah.
A lot of people think he didn't.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's his usual, forgive me to use this word, his usual gangsterism, and drama, and clear lights romance, and everyone in the world that mattered yesterday, economically, financially, everybody was waiting for Trump. And if you look at the numbers of people that watch the broadcast, that's what he wants. He's the big guy. So everybody, and then I think it gives him some kind of energy, knowing that an action he has taken is going to affect the world. Everybody is like, what is a standstill? And that's him. So did he think it through? From his own angle, maybe he did, because it's not a one-day decision.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, they think that it's either he didn't think it through, or he thought it through in his alternative truth. He has his own world. Trump has his own world, and whether you like it or not, he wants you to be in that world, see things from his own eyes, and he doesn't care about what happens to the rest of the world. And he says it's America first. Can you imagine? He says it's Liberation Day. So America is going to be liberated. He has criticized his predecessors, said they were stupid, they didn't know what they were doing, they allowed the world to take advantage of America. But as I must tell you, this is the highest level of a country in modern times, going against the world. This is the highest point, this is the highest level of an American president isolating the rest of the world, trying to have what you can call an isolationist policy. That is, do it my way, or forgive me, maybe you can go to hell. So, like I said, the consequences of this action are just unraveling.
We have the World Trade Organization, ably led by our own Nigerian, Okonjo Iweala.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering what she'd be thinking about this right now, because he was asked some few weeks back about the implications of these things if Donald Trump continues with his trajectory of tariffs. And she clearly says that we just have to look through it. We have to look at the papers and look at the books. But right now it has happened, and Europe, Mexico, Argentina, these countries are surely going to retaliate. What should the World Trade Organization be doing right now as concerns this development?
Honestly, I really don't know. Yesterday I was watching, I've forgotten his name, but he used to used to occupy the same position that Okonjo Iweala occupies now. And he was being interviewed yesterday. And what my summary of that interview was that this is bad for the world. How are we going to cope? How are we going to do this? How are we going to manage this? So, I'm sure Okonjo Iweala will not be feeling very good at this time, because I don't know how they are going to wade into these and try to manage things and try to make it better. Honestly, what I would say is that this is still, as we say in broadcasting or in today's media, this is a developing story. This is a developing issue. So in the next hours and days, we'll see people weigh in, countries weigh in, experts weigh in, and then start to see how this can be managed without the kind of crisis that's being envisaged by a lot of people across the world.
You know, on a final note, do you think this would wane the influence of the United States across boards? I mean, we're beginning to see the numbers. People are beginning to stay away from America for a while. Some people have also said, after all, he's going to stay 4 years and then they are back to business. But do you see people staying away completely from America and do businesses in other countries or with other countries and isolate America, since it has come up with these kinds of policies? And how would that influence America's influence on the world politics?
Charles, forgive me, but let me just say a quick thing. 4 years, the man wants to go for 30. That's and he said it's serious. They actually, pinned him down, and he said, "I'm not joking." He wants to go for a third term, and he says it's possible.
How?
I don't know. He says it's been told it's possible because, even though that's not the question you asked, if you look at it, the Constitution. There were some things he and his people are talking about the Constitution not being the Constitution, being a later day thing. Because if you remember, it was after Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, after he died, just towards the conclusion of the World War. And if you remember what had happened, he was on his third term. And he was very sick. And he was the one that negotiated the American whatever with Russia, with the big powers. And a lot of people thought that his illness had affected his negotiation powers. And they thought he had stayed there for a long time. And then for other reasons, they now decided that nobody will be in office for more than 2 terms. That started after FDR in the presidency of Truman. So he believes that, I don't know what he's thinking and how he's going to do it, but you remember that the first American president had an option to serve a third term.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because at that time there was no term limit. Who was the first American president? George Washington?
No, I'm sure George Washington.
Forgive me, but that president decided on his own to do only 2 terms. At that time, there was no limitation. There was no constitutional limitation. So, so I don't know how Trump is going to do this. But with Trump, all things are possible. So I don't know how he's going to do it. A lot of people say the American people won't let it happen. The institutions in America won't let it happen. But he says he's not joking about it. Anyway, that by the way. So you said, how does it put America in the eyes of the world? How does it affect America's leadership position? I think in a conversation I had with you or somewhere else, I said that leadership comes with responsibilities. America cannot continue to say, I am leading the world, when you're not going to be responsible for the burdens of the world.
Absolutely.
So, a lot of things America had done in the past, call it philanthropy, call it whatever, was in tune, in tandem with their leadership position in the world. You can't be the policeman of the world and you don't finance the security guarantees of your allies, where you are leader. Even in Nigeria, where we're leader of ECOWAS, look at books, look at the history. Nigeria has borne a greater percentage of the bills of ECOWAS. When we did peacekeeping in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, and other countries, Nigeria bore a bigger share of that cost. So America cannot continue to be the leader of the world if America is going to be behaving this way. According to you, it's just 4 years. We don't know. But I agree with you, or say that whatever is happening with Trump, first of all, his approach to global philanthropy, in quotes, you said aid to other countries and the withdrawal is affecting the leadership of America. His position in Ukraine, where he says, no, America can't bear all of it. You remember the last press conference by the Ukrainian president, who said, you can't dash me money and come back years after and tell me that I have to pay back. Because there was no negotiation that you were giving me a loan. It was aid. So if you don't do that, and the Europeans are taking over and funding their defense of Ukraine, how can you make a decision about Ukraine? That's for instance.
Yeah.
So it's affecting the stature, it's affecting the standing, it's affecting the position of America in global affairs, no doubt.
All right, we'll leave it there. It's a developing story. I just also mentioned that you were right about the first president of America, George Washington.
Oh, was I right?
Yes, you were.
Thank you.
You were. All right, thank you so much. We truly appreciate your insight on this particular topic.
Thank you.
All right, back to the news. Meanwhile, a public commentator, Steve Orura, has described the latest U.S. tariffs as a critical wake-up call for Africa to emancipate itself from Western dependency. Speaking with Signature TV on Wednesday, Orura warned that Africa could face significant economic fallout from a shifting global trade landscape.
Today, Trump is trying to advocate that the benefit, the economic superpower of America should be inherent